The sun beat down on the parched earth, its relentless rays turning the ground into a cracked mosaic of desolation. Dust devils danced in the heat, swirling and twisting like restless spirits, carrying with them the whispers of forgotten tales. A lone hawk circled overhead, its shadow gliding across the desolate landscape, a silent sentinel of the skies, ever watchful. This was the heart of the West, a place where survival was a daily battle, where the strong thrived and the weak perished. A lone figure emerged from the shimmering heat haze, a mirage that slowly took form, revealing a man hardened by the unforgiving land. Tall and lean, he rode a powerful black stallion, a beast as fierce and untamed as the land itself. His name was El Tigre, and he carried with him the weight of a past he could not outrun, a burden that etched lines of sorrow on his face.
El Tigre was no ordinary drifter. His presence commanded attention, his eyes held stories untold, and his silence spoke volumes. He was a man of honor, driven by a thirst for justice, a relentless pursuit that had become his life's mission.
Years ago, he had witnessed a horrific act, a moment that had seared itself into his memory, forever altering his path. A cold-blooded murder that had shattered his world, leaving behind a void filled with anger and a thirst for retribution. The man responsible, a ruthless outlaw named Sam Donovan, still haunted his every waking moment, a spectre of his darkest nightmares. He adjusted his Stetson, his eyes narrowed with grim determination, a silent vow to bring Donovan to justice. El Tigre was on a mission to settle an old score, a journey that had taken him across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the West. He was riding towards redemption, a town whispered to be Donovan's last known hideout, a place where the final chapter of his quest would unfold. With each step his horse took, the weight of his past grew heavier, but so did his resolve. El Tigre knew that this journey was not just about vengeance, it was about finding peace within himself. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the desert, El Tigre pressed on, knowing that the night would bring him closer to his destiny. The horizon beckoned, a promise of closure and the hope of redemption. In the fading light, El Tigre rode on, a solitary figure against the vast, unyielding landscape. Years on the trail had hardened El Tigre. He was no longer just a man. He had become a legend, a ghostly figure whispered about in saloons and around campfires. His name struck fear into the hearts of those who had wronged him, and his presence was a constant reminder of the vengeance that rode with him. He'd become a shadow, a whisper of vengeance in the wind. His movements were as silent as the night, and his eyes held a cold, steely resolve that could pierce through the bravest of souls. El Tigre was a man on a mission, and nothing would stand in his way. His face, weathered and tanned, bore the marks of countless battles fought under the unforgiving sun. Each scar told a story, each wrinkle a testament to the hardships he had endured. His eyes, though hardened, still held a glimmer of the man he once was, a man who had loved and lost, a man who had been pushed to the brink. He rode with a quiet intensity, his hand never straying far from the Colt Peacemaker holstered at his hip. The weight of the gun was a constant reminder of the life he had chosen, a life of relentless pursuit and unyielding justice. Every step his horse took brought him closer to his ultimate goal, and every breath he took was filled with the promise of retribution. The gun, a relic of a bygone era, was more than just a weapon to El Tigre. It was a symbol of his resolve, a testament to his unwavering commitment to justice. The Colt Peacemaker had seen him through countless battles, and it had never failed him. It was an extension of his very being, a part of him that he could not live without. It was an extension of himself, a tool of justice in a land where the law was as fickle as the desert wind. In a world where right and wrong were often blurred, El Tigre stood as a beacon of hope for those who had been wronged. His gun was his voice, and with it he spoke the language of justice.
He had tracked Donovan across mountains and plains, each mile fueled by a burning desire for retribution. The journey had been long and arduous, but El Tigre's resolve had never wavered. He had faced countless obstacles, but each one had only strengthened his determination. He knew that the end was near, and he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. He'd heard tales of Donovan's ruthlessness, of the fear he instilled in the hearts of men. Donovan was a man who thrived on chaos, a man who had left a trail of destruction in his wake. But El Tigre was not easily intimidated. He had faced men like Donovan before, and he knew that fear was a weapon that could be turned against its wielder. But fear was a language El Tigre didn't understand. He had been forged in the fires of adversity, and fear had no place in his heart. His mind was clear, his purpose unwavering. He knew that the only way to defeat a man like Donovan was to face him head-on, to stare into the abyss and not blink. He knew that facing Donovan would be like staring death in the face, but El Tigre had made peace with his own mortality long ago. He was prepared to do whatever it took to bring Donovan to justice, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The stakes were high, but El Tigre was ready to pay the price. But he was ready to make the devil pay. Donovan had taken everything from him, and now it was time for El Tigre to take it all back. The showdown was inevitable, and El Tigre was ready to face his destiny. He had come too far to turn back now, and he was determined to see this through to the end.
As he rode into redemption, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The town was a ghostly reminder of the past, a place where dreams had been shattered and lives had been lost. El Tigre could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, but he pushed forward, his resolve unshaken. The town was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the creaking of a rusty sign swaying in the wind. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that screamed of danger. El Tigre knew that Donovan was close, and the final confrontation was imminent. The air was thick with tension, and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that screamed of danger. El Tigre's senses were on high alert, every nerve in his body tingling with anticipation. He knew that the time had come to face his destiny, to confront the man who had caused him so much pain. The showdown was about to begin, and El Tigre was ready to write the final chapter of his story. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and sweat. The atmosphere was almost suffocating, a blend of unwashed bodies and the sharp tang of alcohol. It was a place where secrets were whispered and deals were made in the shadows. The Saloon, a ramshackle building with peeling paint, was the heart of redemption. Its weathered facade told stories of countless brawls and broken dreams. The wooden sign creaked in the wind, barely holding on, much like the town itself. A haze of smoke hung low, obscuring the rough-looking patrons huddled over their drinks. The dim light from the oil lamps cast eerie shadows, making the place feel like a den of ghosts. Conversations were murmured and laughter was rare, replaced by the clinking of glasses and the occasional outburst. El Tigre dismounted, the spurs on his boots clinking against the wooden floorboards. His entrance was marked by a silence that spread like wildfire. The sound of his spurs was the only thing that dared to break the quiet, a metallic reminder of his presence. All eyes turned towards him. Conversations halted mid-sentence, and even the piano player missed a note. It was as if time itself had paused to acknowledge the stranger who had just walked in. He could feel their stares burning into him, judging his every move. The weight of their gazes was almost physical, a collective scrutiny that he had grown accustomed to over the years. Each pair of eyes seemed to ask the same question: friend or foe? Ignoring the scrutiny, he walked towards the bar, his gaze sweeping across the room. He noted the exits, the faces, the potential threats. It was a habit, a survival instinct honed from years of living on the edge.
"Whiskey," he said to the bartender, his voice low and gravelly. It was a voice that carried the weight of countless miles and untold stories.
The bartender, a burly man with a handlebar moustache, eyed him cautiously. His eyes were sharp, taking in every detail of the stranger before him. He had seen many like El Tigre, and he knew trouble when he saw it.
"You're new in town, stranger," he said, placing a glass on the counter. His tone was neutral, but there was an underlying current of suspicion. "Name's Jake. What brings you to redemption?" The question hung in the air, a test of sorts. "They call me El Tigre," he replied, taking a slow sip of his drink. The whiskey burned, but it was a familiar burn, one that grounded him. He let the silence stretch, knowing that his next words would set the tone for what was to come. "I'm looking for Sam Donovan." The name was a key, unlocking a flood of reactions.
A hush fell over the saloon. It was as if the very mention of the name had sucked the air out of the room. Conversations died, and all that remained was a tense, expectant silence. The name hung in the air like a curse. It was a name that carried weight, a name that everyone knew but few dared to speak. The tension was palpable, a living thing that seemed to coil around the room. El Tigre could feel the tension rising, the fear palpable. He had expected this reaction, but it still sent a shiver down his spine. The room was a powder keg, and he had just lit the fuse. He knew he'd just stirred a hornet's nest. The looks on the patrons' faces told him that much. Fear, anger, curiosity, they were all there, swirling in a volatile mix. And he was about to face the full fury of the swarm. He braced himself, knowing that the next few moments could define his fate. The saloon was a battlefield, and he was ready for whatever came next. The saloon doors swung open with a bang, shattering the tense silence. 4 men entered, their spurs jingling menacingly. They were a rough-looking bunch, clad in leather and armed to the teeth. At their center stood a tall, imposing figure, his face hidden by the shadow of a Stetson, Sam Donovan.
Well, look what the wind blew in, El Tigre, as I live and breathe. Come to die in my town, have you?
We have unfinished business, Donovan.
Business? The only business we ever had ended with your brother 6 feet under.
The saloon had become a tinderbox, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. The other patrons, sensing the impending storm, scrambled for the exit, leaving El Tigre and Donovan alone in the center of the room. The showdown was about to begin. The first shot was deafening. Donovan, a cruel smirk playing on his lips, drew his revolver with lightning speed. But El Tigre was faster. He'd been waiting years for this moment, his hand hovering over his peacemaker, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. The air exploded with the deafening roar of gunfire. Smoke filled the saloon, stinging El Tigre's eyes. He coughed, fanning the smoke away with his hand, his heart pounding in his chest. Donovan lay sprawled on the floor, a crimson stain blooming on his chest. His eyes were wide with surprise, his gun still smoking in his hand. El Tigre stood over him, his own gun still raised. He felt a strange sense of emptiness wash over him. Years he had chased this moment, fueled by vengeance. But now that it had come, there was no sense of triumph, no feeling of satisfaction. Only a hollow ache in his soul.